Now that our core architectural structure is built, I'm going to start adding in some rocks around the building. The rocks are a little bit tricky in the sense that you need to have some kind of uniform scale, but you need to also kind of guess by eye of what feels right. So I'll walk you through some of the rock placements that I've done, but feel free to experiment with different sizes, rotations, and scales to what you feel is right for your level. So let's begin with some of the scales that I used on the rocks for this level. To begin, let's go to the content browser and search for rock. We're going to use this guy, the Rock Mesa 06. For the first set of rocks on top of our round pillars in between our building, I changed the scale of the rock to 0.75, and in the Y draw scale also to 0.75. And then I rotated it by 90 degrees, negative or positive, doesn't matter. And then I moved it into place over here. So that the rock fills in the space between our pillar and our building, roughly like this. And then I cloned it and rotated it 180 degrees. And snap it. And you can move it up a little bit. Maybe add in a little more angle so it's not so straight. And then you can clone this guy again. And bump it up, rotate it. Try to give it sort of an organic feel. Again, I'm just using that spacebar hotkey to change between rotation and movement as I've been doing throughout this tutorial. And clone it one more time. Change some of the rotations on these guys. You can rotate it in different angles as well, so you get different sides and shapes of this same rock. Next, I'm going to start adding in the rocks that are above this support set that we created. I'm going to clone this same rock and change the Y scale back to 1 and the overall draw scale to 1.2, and rotate this and move it so that it sits on top of my supports that I created. Something like that. You can have a little bit of overlap, try to make it feel a little organic. And then I cloned this guy and rotated it and do some other rotations and put it on the other set of supports I have. Next, you can add in a third rock right here in between our pillar set by rotating it vertically and changing the scale to 0.75 in overall and 0.75 in the Y, and just move this into place between our pillars. You can just play with the rotations and you get some sort of effect like that. Then once again, I'm going to drag this rock I have over here that's a scale of 1.2 and rotate it so that I cover up the gap between this rock and this side of the building. Then I'm going to copy this 0.75 scale rock again and just add it to the bottom of the foundation. Again, play with the rotations and directions. You don't have to put it exactly like this. And then lastly, I'm going to clone this same guy and change its Y scale back to 1 and the overall draw scale to 5. This will be a very large rock on the edges of our level. Just like that. Now what we'll do is we'll add similar scale rocks to the left side, but in various different rotations, so that it looks slightly different but yet similar to the right side. So what we'll do is we'll drag this 1.2 scale rock to our left side and change the rotation in any which way you like. It has to be exactly like this, so that it sits on top of the support pillars. Then we'll clone this guy. Then clone the middle rock. And then clone this other 1.2 scale rock that was on the side of the building to this side to cover up the gap. And then clone the 0.75 scale rock on the right side to the left side to cover the foundation. And then clone the very large 5 scale rock to the left side as well. And change the rotation. And there you go. The level's starting to take more of an organic shape now. Next we're going to add in some rocks up top. Again, taking one of our rocks that already exist, we'll just clone it and move it up and change the scale to 1.5 and rotate it. And put it on the left side of this building. And clone to the right side. Change the rotations. Again, any which way you feel like. That doesn't have to be exactly like this. It's whatever you feel looks good for your level. and then clone this guy one more time to a scale of 2, or rather 3, and change the rotation. And clone it to the other side. Change the rotations again. And then we can add in one more rock right in the middle between those two in the back, and change the scale of this guy to the Y scale of 1 and the overall draw scale of 1.3. And kind of change the rotation. Like so. And there you go. Up next, we're going to add in the waterfalls on the top, middle, and lower sections of the level. We'll go to our content browser and search for waterfall. Select the first waterfall, waterfall 01. Rotate this guy 180 degrees so that the waterfall is falling away from the level, like this. Next, we're going to change the scale of this waterfall. The overall draw scale will be 0.35. The X draw scale will be 0.8. The Y draw scale will be 1.5. And the Z draw scale will be 5. Once you've set the scale, line up the waterfall so it covers the BSP foundation we created earlier. That looks just about right. Next, clone the same waterfall and move it up top. We're going to change the scale of this waterfall. The overall draw scale will remain at 0.35. The X draw scale will be 1.2. Sorry, it will be 0.75. The Y draw scale will be 1, and the Z draw scale will be 3. So once again, the draw scale for the top waterfall is 0.35, 0.75, 1, and 3. We're going to move this waterfall into place. So that the bottom of the waterfall, looking straight on, lines up with the edge of our angled blocks. Next, we're going to go back to our content browser and go for waterfall 02. Select it and place it in the world. We're going to place this waterfall 02 on our angled blocks. So rotate this 90 degrees and move it forward. We're going to change the scale of this waterfall 02 to 1.3 in the not the overall draw scale, but the draw scale in the Z to 1.3. So once again, the draw scale of waterfall 2 is 1, 1, 1, 1.3. And we're going to move this guy up and rotate it so that the waterfall is falling diagonally across these blocks. Like that. And we can move it up just a little bit so that it feels like the water is coming over the edge and falling down these blocks. Now if you deselect the waterfall and try to select it again, you may have problems trying to select it. If you have this problem, and in the top toolbar, there's a button that says Allow Translucent Selection. Press this, and then you'll be able to select this waterfall 02 a lot easier than you would without the translucent selection turned on. So with the translucent selection turned on, select your waterfall and clone it into the middle, and then onto the far right. And there we go, we have our 3 waterfalls. Up next, I'll discuss foliage in the level. Similar to the placement of the rocks, foliage is done by your own personal tastes and trying to figure out what feels right for the level. You can have a lot of foliage, you can have less foliage, and putting certain foliages in the right spots is more of a creative angle than just saying you have to do it this way and it will work. So for this level, I'll show you some placements, creative placements of foliage, but feel free to experiment with adding more or less as you feel like. So to begin, we'll go to the content browser and remove our search for waterfall in the search bar. What we'll do is we'll go to the packages on the left, we'll go to UDK game, content, showcases, foliage, and then in foliage you'll see there are many different types of plants and things like that. So what we can do is just narrow down our search inside foliage to, let's say, tree. We can pick this SM Gen Foliage 1 large tree and place it in our map. Close the content browser. And now, like I said earlier, like placing foliage is more up to creativity than saying you have to do it this way. So feel free to follow along, or if you feel like putting the foliage in a different spot, help yourself. You know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. But what I'm going to do here is just take this tree and, you know, scale it up maybe a little bit by like 1.5 and give it a little bit of an angle, as if it's, you know, behind these rocks. I'll clone the same tree, adjust the angle, move it maybe back here, clone it again, maybe add a tree way up there behind that rock. Clone it, bring it down, you know, put it at an angle as if it's growing from the side of this rock over here. You know, we could probably even lower it even more so we get more of the leaves rather than the trunk. Let's kind of creatively place the foliage around the level. Again, we can go back to our foliage folder in the content browser, and maybe under the search of tree we have some tree vines. We can take these guys and maybe put them on our pillars. Maybe up the scale like 1.2. Make sure it's lined up with our pillar. change some of the rotation. Don't worry about some of the gaps that you see in the level. We'll be covering these up later as we add more details. And we can go back to our content browser. There's this smaller tree. It's a Shane Tree 01. Select this guy. It's pretty small, so we can scale this up maybe by like 3, even 5. And again, just creatively place it in the world. Maybe even bump up the scale to like an 8. So we can also go back to our content browser and then just delete the word tree and just look around in the actual foliage group and find other things. Like there's this banana plant. We can probably put this in the world somewhere. Scale it up. Change the rotation on that just a little bit. What else we have? You can just go through here. We have these lily pads. Probably put some of these around on the stones. Let's scale it down to like 0.5. Scroll down. This big plant can also work. Scale that up to maybe like a 5 or even a 3. So just pick foliage that you like, creatively place around the level that feels tasteful and looks good for your level. So we can go on and on, but it's just an example of how to do some foliage work in this level. Next up, we're going to be adding in some more architectural details.